In 2008, a territory declared independence. It had its own government, its own institutions, and the backing of the United States and most of Western Europe. Over 100 countries recognized it as a sovereign state. The country it broke away from never accepted it. Neither did Russia. Neither did China. And the territory itself remained in legal limbo, not a member of the United Nations, not universally recognized, and still, decades later, the subject of a frozen conflict that occasionally turns violent. That territory is Kosovo, and the reason it remains unresolved goes far deeper than a single declaration of independence. It goes to the heart of a dispute that is simultaneously about land, identity, religion, war crimes, great power rivalry, and a question that international law has never cleanly answered. Who does a piece of land belong to? The people who consider it sacred, or the people who live on it? This is why Serbia and Kosovo still clash. To understand the conflict, you have to understand what Kosovo means to each side, because both claims are real, both run deep, and neither can simply be dismissed. For Serbs, Kosovo is not just territory, it is the emotional and spiritual center of Serbian national identity. The medieval Serbian kingdom had its heart there. Some of the most important Serbian Orthodox monasteries and churches in existence are located in Kosovo, buildings that are centuries old, that predate almost everything about the modern world. And in 1389, on the Field of Blackbirds near the city of Pristina, a Serbian-led coalition fought the Ottoman Empire in a battle that became the defining myth of Serbian national consciousness. The Serbs lost. Kosovo eventually fell under Ottoman rule, but the memory of that battle, of sacrifice, of resistance, of loss, became foundational to how Serbs understood themselves as a people. For Kosovo Albanians, who make up the majority of Kosovo's population today, the land is simply home. Albanians have lived in Kosovo for centuries. By the 20th century, they were the clear demographic majority. Their language, culture, and identity are rooted there just as deeply. They do not see themselves as newcomers or interlopers. Kosovo is where they are from. These two histories coexist on the same ground, and for most of the 20th century, they coexisted uneasily, but without constant violence. Inside Yugoslavia, under Tito, Kosovo was given the status of an autonomous province within Serbia. It had its own assembly, its own institutions, significant self-governance. The Albanian majority ran much of their own affairs. It was not independence, but it was substantial autonomy. Then Tito died, and the same forces that destabilized the rest of Yugoslavia began working on Kosovo too. The critical moment came in 1989. Slobodan Milošević, who had risen to power in Serbia through nationalist politics, revoked Kosovo's autonomous status. The province was brought under direct Serbian control. Albanian language institutions were shut down. Albanians were removed from government jobs, from schools, from the police. A parallel society emerged. Albanian Kosovars created their own underground schools, their own medical system, their own informal governance structures, funded largely by the diaspora abroad. For most of the 1990s, the dominant Albanian political leader Ibrahim Rugova pursued a strategy of nonviolent resistance. The hope was that the international community, dealing with the wars in Croatia and Bosnia, would eventually turn its attention to Kosovo and push for a political solution. That attention never came, not yet. As the wars in Bosnia and Croatia wound down and the Dayton Agreement was signed in 1995, Kosovo was not included. It was considered an internal Serbian matter. Rugova's peaceful resistance had gained moral credibility but no political results. A younger, more militant generation drew its own conclusions. The Kosovo Liberation Army emerged in the mid-1990s as an armed insurgency. It began attacking Serbian police and officials. The Serbian government responded with a counterinsurgency campaign that quickly escalated beyond any proportionate response. By 1998, Serbian security forces were conducting large-scale operations against Albanian villages. Civilians were being killed. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced. The pattern from Bosnia, the targeting of civilian populations as a method of territorial control, was repeating itself. The international community this time moved faster, though not without deep disagreement. In early 1999, negotiations at Rambouillet in France collapsed. The Serbian government refused to accept terms that would have allowed NATO forces into Kosovo. NATO, unwilling to watch another Balkan atrocity unfold while deliberating endlessly, launched an air campaign against Serbia in March 1999. The bombing lasted 78 days. It was controversial, conducted without UN Security Council authorization, because Russia would have vetoed it. Serbia eventually withdrew its forces from Kosovo. NATO troops entered the province. Kosovo was placed under UN administration under Security Council Resolution 1244, which simultaneously recognized Yugoslav and there for Serbian sovereignty over Kosovo while establishing an international administration that functioned, in practice, as a separate governing authority. It was another frozen arrangement designed to stop the immediate crisis, leaving the fundamental question unanswered. For nearly a decade after 1999, Kosovo existed in legal suspension. The UN administered it. Serbian sovereignty was nominally preserved on paper, but Serbia exercised no actual authority there, and the Albanian majority, having survived a campaign of violence and displacement, and no intention of returning to Serbian rule in any form. Negotiations over Kosovo's final status dragged through the 2000s. The UN envoy Marty Ahtisaari produced a plan in 2007 that recommended supervised independence for Kosovo. Serbia rejected it. Russia blocked it at the Security Council. The diplomatic path closed, so Kosovo took the other path. On February 17, 2008, Kosovo's assembly declared independence. The United States recognized it within days. Most EU member states followed. By now, over 100 countries have recognized Kosovo as a sovereign state, but the recognition is not universal, and that matters enormously. Serbia refused to recognize it and still does. Russia and China blocked Kosovo's UN membership and have maintained their position consistently. Several EU member states, Spain, Slovakia, Romania, Greece, Cyprus, also refused to recognize Kosovo, largely out of concern about the precedent it sets for their own internal separatist movements. Kosovo today is not a UN member. It cannot join most international organizations that require UN membership. It exists in a strange intermediate status, independent in practice, recognized by many major powers, but legally contested in ways that have real consequences. The International Court of Justice was asked to rule on whether Kosovo's declaration of independence violated international law. In 2010, it issued an advisory opinion stating that the declaration itself did not violate international law, but it carefully avoided ruling on whether Kosovo had a right to independence or whether other states were obligated to recognize it. The opinion resolved the narrow legal question while leaving the political question entirely open. The tension between self-determination and territorial integrity remains unresolved, not just for Kosovo, but as a principle, and both Serbia and Kosovo know it. The formal conflict ended in 1999. The war is over, but low-level tension, political confrontation, and periodic violence have continued ever since. Understanding why requires looking at what is still unresolved on the ground. Northern Kosovo is where the friction is most acute. The north has a significant Serbian minority concentrated around the city of Mitrovica. This population never accepted Kosovo's independence, has maintained close ties to Belgrade, and has resisted integration into Kosovo's institutions. Parallel Serbian structures, schools, healthcare, government services have continued to operate there, funded from Belgrade, in direct competition with Kosovo's own institutions. In 2022 and 2023, tensions in the north escalated sharply. Disputes over license plates, elections, and the Kosovo government's attempts to extend its authority into Serb-majority municipalities trigger confrontations that at points involved armed groups, NATO peacekeepers, and direct intervention by both Belgrade and Pristina. Serbia has never dismantled its political and security networks in northern Kosovo. Kosovo has never achieved full territorial control over its own internationally recognized borders. NATO peacekeeping force, KFOR, remains deployed. The situation is not war, but it is not settled peace either. The EU has spent years trying to broker normalization between Serbia and Kosovo. The Brussels Agreement of 2013 was supposed to begin integrating Serbian parallel structures in the north into Kosovo's legal framework. Progress has been minimal. Both sides have accused the other of bad faith. The agreements exist on paper. The reality on the ground has changed little. Serbia's position is shaped partly by its own domestic politics, where Kosovo remains an intensely emotional issue, and partly by its relationship with Russia, which has consistently supported Belgrade's stance and opposed any outcome that legitimizes Kosovo's independence. For Russia, Kosovo is a useful precedent to reject, and also a useful card to play whenever Western powers raise objections to Russian actions elsewhere. Kosovo's government, meanwhile, faces its own pressures. Patience with the slow pace of international recognition and EU integration has eroded. More assertive policies toward the Serbian minority in the north have alarmed Western partners who worry about escalation. The relationship between Pristina and its Western backers has grown more complicated than the simple alignment of 1999, and in the background, the unresolved status keeps generating problems. Kosovo cannot join the United Nations or most of its specialized agencies. It cannot join Interpol. It has struggled to join UNESCO. Its athletes have competed under unusual arrangements in international sports. These are not just symbolic frustrations. They have practical consequences for a small, poor country trying to build functioning institutions. Serbia and Kosovo still clash because the conflict between them was never actually resolved. It was managed, contained, and periodically suppressed, but the core question was never answered in a way that both sides, or the international community as a whole, could accept. What the Kosovo question exposes is one of the deepest fault lines in the international order. The principle that borders should not be changed by force sits in direct tension with the principle that peoples have the right to determine their own political future. When those two principles collide, as they did in Kosovo, as they have elsewhere, there is no clean answer. There is only power, precedent, and the particular circumstances of each case. Kosovo used that tension to achieve independence. Serbia uses the same tension to deny it. Russia uses the same argument to justify actions in entirely different contexts. The precedent cuts in every direction at once. What remains is a small territory in the Western Balkans that is simultaneously independent and not fully recognized, stable and periodically volatile. European in aspiration and trapped by a history it cannot leave behind. The guns of 1999 are silent. The dispute that caused them is not. And in a region where the 20th century already proved how quickly unresolved questions can turn catastrophic, and it's not a situation the world should be comfortable simply waiting out.